All right, welcome back everybody to week 7 of our course, where we'll be talking about today are structuring your advancement staff, as well as what advancement services is. So let's go ahead and get started. I'll share my screen. Okay, so let's go ahead and start talking about structuring advancement staff. And of course, just a little review about what centralized and decentralized models are. But of course, you can look and think about that in the centralized structure, there's just one division responsible for managing the many development operations, and resources come from either the president or institutionally related foundation. So here, just like it says, centralizes, everything's all together. And so there's one central office that handles the advancement operations, as opposed to decentralized where the units are basically housing their own advancement offices. And so a school of business may have their own alumni person, may have their own fundraiser, may even have their own gift processor. But in the decentralized, then those units go ahead and they're the ones funding the operation and housing their operation. Um, and so then you can also see that the priorities become a little bit different, whether you're centralized or decentralized. Where centralized tends to carry the theme of the overall um, message of the university as a whole, where decentralized tends to carry the message of the unit or school itself. And of course, there's the hybrid model, which provides many advantages. It facilitates the collaboration of everyone involved. In this scenario, the chief development officer has strong connections to both the academic unit and central administration because of the dual reporting lines to the dean and usually an associate vice president. So those are the three that you'll generally come across, and they'll change throughout the lifespan of an institution. So one thing that we want to talk about is, well, how exactly are development officers deployed? How do institutions go about staffing them? How do they strategically place them to meet their needs? So you can have regional fundraisers, and so those are the ones that are by state or by location. They might have a specific city or a couple of cities, or like I said, a state or a whole section of the United States, or even some that go abroad. You have initiative-based fundraisers, so that's for like a specific building project. They know that the project is going to be for, let's say, 4 years. This may even be possible for like a capital campaign. A capital campaign may run 8 years, and so the institution may say, we're going to hire fundraisers just for this specific initiative, whatever the campaign's called. They'll hire them for that, and then that's their specific project that they work on, and then at the end of that, then they move on to another institution that's doing something similar, or they get absorbed into the institution itself. Are there fundraisers that are assigned by portfolio capacity? So you might assign a development officer that just says that focuses on gifts of under $1,000, or a development officer that focuses on gifts of $1,000 to $5,000, and then ones that focus on major gifts, maybe gifts over 10,000, and ones that focus on principal gifts, such as those that are over 100,000 to $1 million and so. And so what you can see is a lot of times here, fundraisers that are assigned by gift level are often either early in their career, so they're starting off with the lower level gifts, or they're later in their career and they're really helping with the principal gifts. Right? And then there's also fundraisers assigned by types of giving. So, for instance, you could be an annual giving officer, which means that you're responsible for the annual replenishment of gifts throughout the fiscal year, and then the planning of how you're going to market and reach out to folks in the next year. There's also planned giving officers, which focus on what we've talked about before, like those bequests, those deferred gifts, those end of life type of gifts, as well as folks that just focus on online giving. This is kind of a newer one that's popped up, but for sure, there's institutions that are hiring development officers just to focus on getting online gifts. So having social media presence, doing online fundraisers. And of course, there's folks that focus on just doing events. So fundraisers that primarily do fundraisers through events like fundraising dinners, golf tournaments are usually pretty popular. Those types of things fall under that events fundraiser. And then there's fundraisers that are assigned by constituency. So this may be, now it's different from just being assigned like by school. This may be saying like, you're assigned for corporate and foundation giving. So you're responsible for all the money that comes in through companies, or you're responsible for the gifts that come in through a private foundation. Or maybe you're responsible for the gifts that come in through students, parents, a specific class year, or even alumni themselves. But fundraisers by constituency group is an interesting group because that too is also growing. If you can think about when we talked about folks that are from underrepresented populations. There are now development officers that are being hired for those populations, such as Black alumni chapter fundraisers or Hispanic alumni chapter fundraisers, and all the way through all the various types of diversity that's out there. There are starting to be groups that pop up for this, and like I mentioned before, even alumni that live abroad, so international alumni fundraisers. And so there's definitely opportunity for fundraising in all those areas. And so as they continue to grow, then you see the university putting more and more resources behind it. So you got all these fundraisers out there. You got to have some rules of how to get along because by nature they're going to be competitive with each other. And so tensions often arise around the prospect strategy, the fundraiser credit, and the engagement. So the strategy and what do we ask them for? Well, if it's a graduate of your university, there could be a call for just a general appeal for the school, meaning the university, or it could get down to specific programs. Or what if that fundraiser or sorry, what if that prospect has a spouse? And what if they have degrees from different schools within within the university itself? Or what if even a prospect has multiple degrees? It can become kind of tense to figure out what exactly to ask them for and who should go first. Um, a fundraiser credit, the fundraisers, of course, want to keep their job. And so they're always worried about who gets credit for bringing in a gift. And so that's one of the things that we'll talk about, as well as engagement and making sure that at what point are they done engaging someone and ready to ask versus still pursuing that engagement and making sure that they're building that relationship. All of those things can vary from person to person and from prospect to prospect. And so they cause a little bit of tension within the team. But before reaching out for sure to a prospect, a fundraiser must get clearance from the portfolio manager. So the development officers all get a group of alumni to work with or a group of prospective donors to work with, and that's called their portfolio. So before they go out and they reach out to someone, they can look and say, whose portfolio are they in? More than likely, they're going to be in their own portfolio, but if they're not, if they're in someone else's for whatever reason, then they have to do the courtesy of reaching out to that manager to say, hey, I'd like to approach this prospect. Give me your thoughts on it, or can we work collaboratively, or would you let me approach them by myself? Engagement strategies must be captured and entered into the central database. This can be an Achilles heel for many fundraisers, and the simple aspect of it is they go through all this work, but they fail to put down a record of their events or a record of their strategy in the central database, and therefore it's not recorded. And what that does is it really cripples the institution because, like most positions, there can be some turnover. And so when a development officer leaves, then a new development officer comes in and has no idea what's going on with this prospect or what's going on with this donor. And it's a really bad look for the institution and for the school because it looks like that the ball was dropped in their relationship. But in addition to that, it really helps to know what prospects and what donors you have at certain stages of the development continuum so that you know what you have to do in aggregate terms for moving these folks along the pipeline. You may be asked, well, how many people are you just building relationships with in cultivation? How many people are you getting ready to solicit in the next 3 months? And how many people are you stewarding because they made a gift and now you're just maintaining that relationship? Well, a development officer has to be able to answer all those questions, at least on a monthly basis, and being able to segment and quantify the data of the folks that they visited can only happen when it's being recorded in the central database. Proposals themselves, so those asks for solicitation, especially when they're on the larger side, they need to be vetted before presenting to donors. Vetted as in showing it to the upper management, showing it to others on their team, so that everyone's aware of what's being asked for and what and the timeline for when those asks are going to take place. Credit. So making sure that you get credit for gifts that you solicit, but as well as give credit to those that have helped you. It's very few gifts that are done just one on one. A lot of times there is sometimes an assistant dean at the table, a faculty member, or another development officer that helped you build that relationship. So making sure that within the system that those people are noted for the role they played, because again, it really goes back to um, analyzing and looking at how that person is doing their job. And when you're sharing credit, folks will share credit with you, and it's a pretty good thing to do because again, you never really know how an ask is going to go. So having more people there to open the door is great, but just make sure that they're being appreciated, and then they're more likely to do so in the future. And then finally, fundraisers have authority to tell a dean or volunteer that they cannot visit with a prospect or donor. What I really mean by this is exactly what it says, but it's just that as the fundraiser, you have the eye on, and the development officer knows what's happening in the fundraising circle. So, for instance, it may be that a dean really wants to get in front of a certain prospect. Well, that certain prospect could also be being approached by other people within the development sphere who, for whatever reason, have them as a higher priority than you do, than your school does. And so the development officer really has to have that close enough relationship with the dean to say, hey, actually, we can't approach this person at this time, and this is why. Or, hey, just trust me, there's another strategy going on. And so for now, we need to be hands off. It's pretty important because, again, the most important thing is the relationship with the donor to the institution as a whole. And so making sure that you're not overgrazing, making sure that, okay, you know that this person just gave to a program a month ago and now your dean wants to approach them for another gift. You can see where a development officer would need to come in and say, hey, pump the brakes, let's wait, let's give them some time to breathe, because we want to maintain this relationship without burning the prospect or the donor out. So how are you going to measure success? Several ways. That advancement structures are often at odds with donor experience that we seek to create. And that can be a challenge because you want to create success, but then just the structure itself, like gave the example earlier about exhausting people, is kind of really fast paced in the sense that there's always a need that needs to be met, and there's only a certain amount of donors out there and prospects. And so you can see that it's depleting. And so one of the things that we're often struggling with of how to balance is how fast that pace can go versus how well replenished your donors can become and what new donors are coming into the pipeline. One thing that you'll be quick to observe is that donors lose confidence in an institution when the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing. So that's that whole, well, I'm getting solicited by 30 different by okay, let's not there. I'm getting solicited by 5 different entities at an institution, and none of them seem to be coordinated or understand what I'm really interested in giving in. So as a development officer, you really have to again look at that alum or that prospect as an individual, look at their giving history, look at the things they've been involved in, and then really kind of help determine what should take priority. And at times, even with your own wishes, take a step back and say, this isn't the time for us, but down the road will be. And let me coordinate with the other development officers, let me coordinate with the other advancement personnel to see when a good time for us would be to make that solicitation. One of the things that you want to do, especially to measure success, and is probably the most basic of all of the measurements, is just the dollars raised. So focusing on the bottom line value of gifts. But as you could see, that if you just focused on dollars raised, what does that incentivize the fundraiser to do? Just strictly raise dollars. So they may be far more aggressive, and you could be raising dollars to the expense of some really long-term relationships, are getting fewer dollars today just to get them in the door at the expense of larger dollars that would have came tomorrow if you took the time to properly steward the relationship. Visit secured. So this is just a measurement of the activity. So it definitely is something that focuses on activity and the indications for capacity and inclination for gifts. So this is where they're out there making those determinations of, well, are you likely to give and how much can you give? And so it's a good measurement for success because, of course, if you're out there doing that and qualifying folks, then you're going to have more people to visit and more people to ask for funds. Referral goals, this will be another great measurement where you're actually measuring how the development officer or yourself is on really looking at the donor's interest first and then seeing where that gift is best facilitated. It may be you within your school or it may be within a certain program. And so you take the step back and say, hey, this person is actually more interested in theater. And so I'm going to introduce them to the development officer that handles theater because they'll be better stewarded there. And then making that referral. But making sure that that development officers get credit for making those referrals because that's important because that's how, again, it's more about the relationship between the institution and that individual prospect as opposed to the development officer themselves. Collaborative proposals is along the same lines because you can see that often there's many people that their giving is complex. It's very rare for someone to give to one program and for their whole duration of their life. It's more likely that when someone supports an institution, they're giving a little bit of money here, a little bit of money there, a major gift for this area, a major gift for that area, and so forth. And so, really, their giving is spread around quite a bit. And so, making sure you're working with fellow development officers so you can come up with collaborative proposals that will better serve the donor, which they'll appreciate. Entrepreneurial activities, making sure that you give credit or are getting credit for activities that you're doing that are innovative. It may be as simple as, well, instead of raising money for a one-on-one ask, I challenge people to give online for this very specific cause, and I was able to match it with a gift from a company, or I was able to match it with a gift from another donor. Or I was able to come up with a totally different new fundraising activity. You can see many things have come out of that. You've seen runs come out of this. You've seen, like, so we mentioned before, golf tournaments come out of this, auctions come out of this. But doing those things that are giving credit for being entrepreneurial, giving credit for thinking outside the box and saying, hey, if we did this a different way, we could raise money. If we partnered with this company, we could raise money and that what that adds and brings to the table. And finally, tiered portfolios. So giving credit and giving some type of attention to a development officer or your ability to move people from different stages of the cycle, like we've already talked about before, taking people from cultivation to solicitation to stewardship and so forth, even going back and forth between those three. Just what is your ability or their ability to move people through those prospect continuums and making sure that even though you may not have a ton of solicited gifts in any one term, but if you show that you've been moving people through the continuum, that's going to pay off. Then that's something that again is really speaking to future success. And then the number of proposals submitted and proposals closed. So how many asks, what we're calling here proposals, have you made or have they made, and how many have they closed, meaning there was an actual decision made, and giving credit for those. Because again, not everything is going to be a positive win in terms of giving you dollars, but going through the process and making those proposals and getting closure is successful. It's successful in the terms of it's showing that you're going through the process, it's showing that you have prospects and alumni that are going through the process, and that success can again be reached down the road. So making sure that you measure those, that you're measuring those activities. There's a couple cultural considerations that we want to look at. Articulated fundraising metrics, whether implemented in a decentralized or that centralized or that hybrid environment that we talked about, will directly affect the culture and behavior that an investment leader is seeking to create. So a fancy way of saying that depending on which of these models you pick, you're going to have an effect on what it is that motivates your staff and the culture that's in there, how competitive they are with each other, how they look at team goals, how they view collaboration outside of their team, etc. So you have to really be careful on which one of those that you pick and how you plan to pursue it. By expanding the focus from purely dollars raised and visits completed, fundraisers are empowered and granted permission to focus on the life cycle of development and the building of strong relationships, which is really the essence of true philanthropy. So, again, my encouragement and what I've seen be successful and what the research says it's successful is when you move away from just focusing on dollars and completions to where you're really focusing on the whole cycle, giving credit and experiencing successes for all steps of the way, even from the steps of just introducing someone to the institution who hasn't given. All of those things will lead to a better chance of success down the road. And then true philanthropy is based on and nurtured through personal connection. It results from a relationship that is built over time. Many of us will see out there that it looks like it's glamorous in the sense that it looks like, oh, they're going out and raising all this money all at once. But I assure you, the money that you're seeing come in through a lot of these institutions has been carefully managed over time in the sense that it's very rare to go out and instantly get a gift. It's more likely that you're building a relationship that takes a year, 2 years to build, and then finally the person is one, you're identifying a cause that speaks to them, and they're able to be in the position to make that gift. So just know it's a process, but once it gets going, then you can see, oh, well, I'm closing gifts of people that I started a relationship a year ago. And as you keep going throughout the years and throughout the career, then that really helps build up. And year after year after year, you have more and more success. So this one's called Connecting with the Advancement Office. Um, Really, professional development conversations ought to focus on goals, strategy, and opportunity rather than resolving current problems. So if you find yourself as an advancement officer working within a team, this is just generally good information that, hey, really focusing on the goals, the strategy, and how to move forward rather than trying to resolve any interoffice issues you all have is really what's best for the development team as a whole. And it's important to reiterate that the role of the fundraiser is to facilitate a connection to the institution and not to manage it. So again, here it's what's best for the donor, what's best for the prospect, and how can you grow that relationship with your institution. Within the development framework at many institutions, it's common to develop stories of impact, particularly when it comes to donor stewardship. So always be on the hunt for what is special about our institution? What is special about our program? How is investing in the institution going to make a change for the better? Because that's something that as a development officer, you'll have to know at the tip of your tongue and something that very much so that the donors are interested in hearing. And so, at its core, philanthropy is about seeking opportunities to connect potential donors with opportunities to make a difference. And you'll know when that happens, and it's a pretty good feeling, but it really is about that joint win of the institution needing that donor and that donor needing that institution in order for fulfillment. And giving makes people feel good. And I think that it's one of the things that is often overlooked, but there's very few donors out there, especially at the major gift level, that give a gift and don't feel incredibly connected and happy towards the institution and towards their decision. All right, now we're going to switch gears and we're going to start talking about advancement services. And many of you may work in these offices or not, but what is advancement services? Plainly, it's the heart of advancement. So it's where the transactions of data occur, where the reporting, where the analysis, where the research and the stewardship all are intertwined with advancement services. So you can think of the traditional elements, and there's a lot of them here, and I'll list them because I think that they're important to remember is it's gift processing, biographic or demographic information, prospect research, prospect development, stewardship, donor relations, which can be events, communications, information tech, reporting, analytics, training and support, budgeting, human resources, even facilities and grants. So everybody that's not a frontline fundraiser is in advancement services, it seems like. But what advancement services really do is they provide that proactivation that you need for analyzing data, providing business intelligence, and make so that you can make informed decisions and so that you can use the data to help drive fundraising strategies. for individuals or organizations as a whole. So advancement services is going to help set you up with who you should visit. If the development officer has a portfolio of 100 people, they're not going to know where to start. But advancement services can go in and say, of these 100 people that you have, here are the 25 that are most likely to give a gift with higher gift inclinations. They can do that research for the development officer so that they know where to focus their time and who they're trying to visit. The database itself is kind of the core of advancement services. And so that's where you're going to be putting in all of the information for the prospect. And this is often called, for many of you that may be using this lingo, is a CRM. It's a core customer relationship management. So customer relationship management, the CRM is where you're going to be inputting that data. And there's many names for it. There's Razor's Edge, there's Advanced CS, there's Summit. There's many brands that are out there, but they all essentially do the same thing. They gather everyone's data that's a prospect, and they help you manage those relationships by telling you what people you have at what stages, and then even giving prompts to what should happen next with those individuals. So what's exciting about today's landscapes is that you can overlay or extend the core database. So that CRM that you have, there's a bunch of add-in tools that you can purchase depending on what your institution wants to do to make personalization. Like I said here, this is where some of the systems will even prompt hey, it's time to send David Decker an email about the upcoming reunion, and will help you personalize that. It'll also help with segmentation. Say if you want to plan a visit to Dallas, you can, within the system, say how many people live within a 30-mile radius of the downtown area of Dallas, and it'll give you all of your group, and you can divide it by just people that you want: graduates of the School of Business, or graduates of the School of Fine Arts, or people that were within this certain club or organization, or maybe just alumni association members, or people that went to the university but didn't graduate, maybe, but have a spouse that graduated. You can segment it all those ways, and that's really helpful and pretty unique. So tools overlaying or extending a core database creates an ecosystem. If you have the right integration tools, then you can swap out tools as new ones are developed or as business needs evolve. And so you may use a tool for a certain period of time and then switch to something else. A good example of that is really when um, social media started becoming a big hit with fundraising, because then you could look and say, okay, give me everyone that has a Twitter account within this specific region because I'm going to put out a tweet, or give me everyone that has a Facebook account because I'm going to promote an event via Facebook just to this group, just to that ecosystem. So the trend is to move to cloud-based solutions. So you're getting more and more systems that are not housed within the institution themselves, that are cloud-based, which is awesome for the development officer because it allows you to be more mobile with all the information at your hands. Other niche products include tools for social media, which we talk about, social listening, which I'm not very well versed on that, but essentially it is when the devices themselves start picking up cues, like maybe Amazon Echo, or it starts listening to what exactly it is you talk about in the background and then starts making suggestions. Sounds creepy, so I'm not really versed into it, but I do know that there are some integration pieces for databases that allow that to occur. So maybe every time they mention your institution, it pings, and then therefore you get a report that says, in an average week, this person mentions your institution X many times. I've never seen that work, but I have read some articles about it occurring. But it's just something to be out there because it's probably going to keep developing as we move forward in the future. Oh my gosh, sorry guys, got click happy. Okay. Portals, a lot of databases are going to portals where you create a login and sign in. And I know everybody has a ton of these login and sign ins, but yeah, a lot of institutions are doing it too. And it lets them go in and look up their giving history. It lets them print out tax forms for their giving. It also lets them get, most of the time, some kind of inside information, possibly on like how a building project's doing or how funding for a certain project is going. oftentimes you can get that within a portal that the institution sets up. So kind of a cool tool. I personally don't see it being used a whole lot, except for folks on the very high end of giving. But it is one that's there and it can make them feel more connected. And then really thinking about what communications are they receiving and in what format? How do they prefer to be contacted? And does the format vary depending on content? The database system can really help you do this because, again, it provides information, it can provides forecasting for what's the best way to contact someone and what they've responded to in the past. Okay, so that is it for this week. I'm looking forward to your guys' final projects. So we'll touch base on that next week. But for sure, you have between now and the end of the term or sorry, you have between now and then our last meeting period to go ahead and get those in. And so looking forward to them. And again, you can always send those to me directly via email. Um, or if you have any questions, please don't make sure that you know that you can reach out to me via text, via phone. My phone number is 316 and I'd love to take your calls and talk about any questions you all have. All right, you have a great week. It's supposed to get cold towards the end of the week, so stay warm. Take care. Bye.